to our November 10th Douglas County Board of County Commissioners business meeting. We want to welcome all of you who are with us here in the Douglas County Courthouse, as well as those of you joining us online. I just want to pass on a bit of information regarding how we'll run our hybrid meeting, both in person and on Zoom in this time of social distancing. Each action item will have an opportunity for public comment. If you want to make a comment on that item, we ask that you wait until the item on the agenda. General public comment on our agenda is for items not on the agenda, but related to general county business. All public comments should be directed to the County Commission. For both opportunities, we'll take public comment from people who are in person in the courthouse first and then online. All public comments are limited to 3 minutes. If you have public comment on an agenda item or under regular general public comment, please use the raise your hand function on Zoom. Staff will call on you and unmute you. We ask that speakers give their name and address for the minutes. The county reserves the right to shut off the microphone and remove any speaker from the meeting if they are vulgar, rude, or inappropriate. If visual aids are used during the meeting, the presenter will share the screen with the call. Participants will not be able to view them without a computer, smartphone, or tablet. All participants will be entered into the meeting with their audio muted, meaning the commission and the public will not be able to hear you. Presenters will be unmuted when their agenda item comes up. We ask that all online presenters use good conference call etiquette and mute their line when not speaking, and introduce themselves each time they do speak. A recording of this meeting will be posted online after the meeting. We will start with our consent agenda. Would any commissioner like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Would anyone here in the courthouse like to pull an item from the consent agenda? Would anyone online like to pull anything from the consent agenda?
This is Commissioner Reed. I seen no comments. I will move to approve consent agenda items 2.1 through 2.5.
Second.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We will move on to general public comment. If you have general public comment not for an item on the agenda this evening, if you're in the courthouse, please come forward. Do we have anyone online for general public comment? Okay, we will move on to our regular agenda. We'll start with agenda item 4.1 from the Sheriff's Office, discussing the Douglas County Correctional Facility. Sarah, do you want to introduce this item as Jay joins us?
Yes, Commissioner Jay Armbruster is here, or Commissioner, I just say that? So sorry, it's been a long week.
I don't think that was an upgrade, Jay.
Sheriff, yeah, sorry for the demotion. Yeah, so.
No, thank you.
Okay, right, yeah. Sheriff Armbruster is here to introduce the item, and also our Director of Capital Projects, Jay Zimmershed, is here to kind of walk through some of the logistics. Sheriff?
All right, thank you. And thank you, Commission, for having me. So obviously, through the last few years, we've had much discussion, some very spirited, about the current correctional facility. And having been in office now for nearly a year, I've come up with something that I would like to see maybe get put in motion. And this is the very first step, A1A. I'm here to just ask for, just to say that here's what the problems that I'm seeing, and this is the direction we would like to go as far as talking to experts. So I have my own set of ideas as to what I would like to see happen, but frankly, I'm not the expert in the room. I'm just a guy with an aerial view of our current facility and a very fancy box of 64 crayons. So what I'm asking, so I guess I'll just get to the issues at hand. And I talk a lot about jail bed capacity and head count or bed count, and that is 186 in our current facility. However, I also talk a lot about functional capacity, which is the makeup of our detainee population, their classification, their charges, their behavior, and our functional capacity is actually much, much lower. So 186 is a bit of a misnomer. And the thing that folks have to remember is that we have 77 doors within our facility that are not, or 77 beds, I'm sorry, that are not behind a locked door. And we cannot and will not ever put somebody behind a door that does not have the hygiene equipment such as toilet, sink, and that kind of stuff. So we want to get our functional capacity up to where it meets our actual bed number. The pandemic is also created a lot of unique situations with isolation. And this being an airborne illness, back in the 1800s, we'd have been worried about tuberculosis, but now we're worried about COVID. We only have 4 cells in the entire facility that have air exchanger capabilities. So it's constantly exchanging air from the outside or infiltrated. I really don't know how that works. But our population is 141 inmates as of this morning. So 4 cells just doesn't really do us much good if we have a cluster or an outbreak, which we have not, but we've been very fortunate. Then the last piece is the inequity and the inequality when it comes to the inmates that are in our facility. I speak a lot about the inequity, especially when it pertains to females. And that's really where I'm gonna probably spend the most time in that. It's just not fair and I can't fix it. So if a male inmate is deemed to be a minimum inmate, they would go to our minimum housing unit, one of 2 now, and they would have 16 hours a day of free time. And there's no restrictions as to when and where they can go within their housing unit for the most part. They can be on the phone, they can have visitors, they can watch TV all day long. If you're a female inmate and you come to our facility and you're in there long enough and you make it all the way to minimum custody, you have 3.5 hours of free time during a 16-hour day, from when they're not locked down for sleep. And so this is something that we want to see addressed and rectified. I have ideas and thoughts, but what I'm saying is that we want to reuse the space that we currently have to better fit the population that we are currently housing. Also moving into the future. So it may represent at some point an expansion of the footprint of the building, but it is absolutely my intention to not expand make it an expansion of our capacity as far as beds. So we will stay within the 186, maybe even be below that if if I get my way. But so what I'm here to do is just say, this is what we're trying to do. We're going to reach out to the experts who do this for a living, and they need to tell us, what we can do, how much it's going to cost, because we have no idea. This may be $1 squillion, and I don't think the taxpayers are going to cover that. But so, but also we need to look and see if there's a way that we can really retrofit some of the housing facilities that we have to do this, or does it need to be something that's built on the side of the building, and then we'll reevaluate those housing facilities into something else that's not beds. So I don't know, did I go over my 3 minutes? I'm sorry.
You aren't on a timer. This is Commissioner Portillo. I do just want to say, we've had a work session on this, and I really appreciate the way that you've brought the public into this discussion through the CJCC. I feel like this has been a very open and transparent discussion with everyone, and I appreciate the goals that this is not an expansion of the jail. This is remodeling the area that we have, because there's been such a great focus on making sure that we don't have low-risk offenders in our jails. So we have to make sure that the area that we have makes sense for the inmates who we currently have in custody, and making that a workable space is really important. So I appreciate all of the public conversations.
Absolutely. And the criminal justice partners in this county have really done an outstanding job as far as decreasing the jail population. And I think it's great. And there's, I would love to see it moved even further down, but I can tell you this, that as of today, we've squeezed all the juice out of those fruits, so to speak. And we have a population that requires a lot of, they're very intensive when it comes to personnel, funding, resources, and our facility is just not set up for this type of population. So that's what we're headed for.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from commissioners? Okay, we will open this up to public comment. Do we have any public comment on this item? Do we have anyone online for public comment? We will bring it back for discussion from commissioners. I do just want to say again, we've had quite a few public discussions about this, and I am happy that we're at the point where we're starting to engage professionals to see what the cost of this really will be for our community.
That's Commissioner Reed. I would agree with that. And I just want to appreciate and affirm Sheriff Armbruster's focus on the equity issues that exist. As somebody who has volunteered in that facility and specifically within the women's pod, it is drastically different what the experience of being incarcerated as a female is versus as a male in that facility. So I really appreciate that lens, Sheriff, and that it is kind of core to the progress that we're making about how to make that the most functional and useful for your staff and for our community. Okay, with that, let me make sure I get the motion right. I move that we support the Sheriff's Department and staff to begin discussions with design and construction consultants for study services for adaptive reuse of spaces at the existing Douglas County Correctional Facility.
Second.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We will move on to item 4.2, receiving the Indigent Defense Service Work Group report. Sarah, do you want to introduce this one? Would you like me to
Yes.
introduce this one? What are you feeling?
I'm certainly comfortable introducing it. Thank you, commissioners, for letting the work group for the Indigent Services Group present to you their final report. I am the B team filling in. The majority of this work was done by our previous criminal justice coordinator, Mike Brower, and I'm playing relief pitcher here to try to help get the report closed out. I'm gonna make sure before I share my screen and we share a brief PowerPoint on this item, oh great, we're moving Matt, our senior data analyst, Matt Cravens, into the panel. Matt's gonna cover several of the slides in the middle regarding some of the data. So Matt, I'm gonna be running the PowerPoint, so you just tell me when you want to advance to slides when I get to your place. So I'm gonna share my screen. Maybe I can figure out how to. Okay, everybody see that? All right, so this is an overview of the Indigent Services Report. The work group members are listed on this slide and are included in the report. Really, I just want to stress that this was a collaborative effort over several months with a lot of work by a lot of people. And I really appreciate everyone's participation in this process. I wanted to highlight defining the problem. We spent some time in the report trying to outline and in our conversations about what some of the specific concerns are with the current system. We've heard from members of the community that there are concerns about lack of organization, transparency, and accountability. There's no current data from the current panel attorneys with regard to clients and caseloads and efficiency. And while local panel attorneys are required to attend annual defense training and continuing education requirements, we don't have any ability to require current panel attorneys to participate in additional training related to our alternatives to incarceration or engage in community-based services. Oversight and accountability for the panel system falls to the chief judge and the courts administrator. And then also the Governor's Commission on Race and Equity and Justice has made a formal recommendation that institutional models should be adopted in communities with over 100,000 residents. We outlined a number of benefits to the institutional model in the report. In addition to just a team approach to problem solving and data collection, there's also a clear point of contact, and there also can just be a voice that can be a part of additional pieces of the criminal justice coordination system in terms of what is happening on the defense end with some of our most vulnerable clients. And then I'm going to turn it over to Matt, who's going to talk a little bit about the data in the current system and walk us through these next set of slides. Matt?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Matt Cravens, Douglas County Data Analyst. So let's start with this figure on the left here. What this shows is the average cost per case for fiscal year 2020 for Douglas County assigned counsel for felonies in the top bar, Kansas statewide assigned counsel in the bottom bar, and statewide public defender offices in the middle bar. And this data is provided by bids. So the cost for Douglas County assigned counsel is highest. It is $1,181, as you can see here. The next highest amount is statewide assigned counsel at $993 on the bottom. And the lowest cost per case is for public defender offices at $842 or $843. So the right-hand table shows the specific costs per case for Douglas County over time, and it shows where that 1,181 number comes from across years. The Douglas County cost has been relatively consistent over the last 2 fiscal years. So next slide, please. And this slide just shows the per case cost over time for Kansas statewide assigned counsel and statewide public defender offices. The 2020 numbers are what you saw in the figure in the previous slide. The public defender cost was actually significantly lower in years prior to 2020, as you can see here. Next slide. So this shows the assigned counsel cost for a number of Kansas counties. You can see that Douglas had the highest 2020 cost among these Kansas counties, but there are other counties with a similar cost per case. It looks like Leavenworth, Jefferson, Sedgwick, and Shawnee have a similar cost per case, but Douglas does have the highest cost per case, and that's been consistent with the last couple of fiscal years. Next slide. So what this top figure shows is the amounts spent and the 2021 budgeted amounts for county supported defense services. The juvenile panel attorneys were the largest cost in 2020 at about $270,000. Indigent adult misdemeanor defense spending was about $195,000 in 2020. We have budgeted $425,000 for 2021, as many of you know. $40,000 goes to KU Legal Aid Society for Juvenile Defense Representation. $20,000 goes to Defense Services for Behavioral Health Court, Drug Court, and Enhanced Diversion. The 2021 budget amounts for these alternative jail programs defense counsels are $50,000. Any questions before I move on? So this bottom table, well, you can ignore the bottom table for a second. The most important one here is the top left-hand table. So what this just shows is the percent of misdemeanor criminal cases with court-appointed counsel. It shows that that percentage is quite high. It's about 80% for regular criminal misdemeanor cases in 2020. And it's about 92% of miscellaneous criminal cases in 2020. Traffic misdemeanor cases are not shown here. So, you know, what this indicates is that there is significant demand for misdemeanor indigent defense in the county. And you can ignore the table on the right-hand side. This just shows the numerators used to calculate the percentages in the top left figure. The bottom table here shows that in Douglas County, currently there are 24 attorneys on the felony panel and 28 on the misdemeanor panel. So this gives you kind of an overview of the data regarding indigent defense in the county. And I am done. So Sarah, you can take over.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate your help walking us through the data. The next slide outlines the felony panel qualifications, and this was given to us by BIDS, the Bureau of Indigent Defense. We go into a lot more detail into what some of these specific categories are in the report itself, but I did want to include that we did talk about those qualifications. And also the qualifications for the misdemeanor panel. We spend a lot of time talking about data in our work group and the kind of data that we'd like to collect. Collecting data and using data to drive our decision-making has been at the heart of our criminal justice coordination process and our look at alternatives to incarceration and criminal justice reform in Douglas County. I think this is really just the starting point for a conversation on data. It is not necessarily an endpoint. And we did have a number of conversations about, as the state moves to the new Odyssey system, how can we track data? How can we extract data? How can we collect it in addition to that? But there was a lot of conversation that information on some of these things would really be helpful in examining the totality of the criminal justice system and making sure that we were evaluating the entire piece in terms of how defense plays into that. We also identified a number of issues for further consideration, and I won't read through them all specifically. They're all in the report. But I would say that I think the work group felt that their role here was not to necessarily answer every question out there on institutional indigent defense, but simply explore the issues, identify the problems, and talk about some of the different options. Also included in the report that I didn't go through here was a number of different models that we explored in that group in terms of managed assigned counsel and different hybrid models. You can read more about those in the report, but I think the work group really felt like its goal and emphasis was to really outline all the issues and identify issues for further consideration as the commission and district court continue to explore this issue. And with that, I just really, I want to make sure we've got a number of members of the work group here with us tonight. And I really, first of all, I just want to thank them for their service and their time into this, and then just say if there are any comments that you would like to make, we certainly open this up to members of the work group if they want to make some contributions. And also I want to acknowledge that Chief Judge James McCabery is here as well. He had some additional comments that are in the report as well. And obviously the commissioners can do that if can take those comments as they choose. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and answer any questions the commissioners might have of the report.
Well, and Sarah, do we have any other work group members online?
Seeing any in the attendee list.
This is Commissioner Portillo. I do just want to reiterate what Sarah said. A huge thank you to everyone who spent their time working with us on this report, and especially want to thank Heather Cessna, because the Board of Indigent Defense Services provided a lot of data for us and a lot of background information. So thank you for helping us with all of that. The goal of this report is really to talk about indigent defense as a whole. Kansas is unique. Most other states don't separate out felonies and misdemeanors the way that we do, with felony funding coming from the state and misdemeanor funding coming from the county. So we thought it was a really important piece of our work group to make sure that we were discussing both of those. So this report does get at both felony and misdemeanor work. We'll open it up if any other work group members have comments. If not, we will open it to questions. Questions from commissioners?
This is Commissioner Reed. I don't have any questions. I thought it was a really thorough report, and I appreciate everybody's time and energy that went into that and the overview here tonight. I think that there's a lot of good information for us to frame the future of our conversations about indigent defense services in Douglas County. So to those of you who showed up tonight, especially, and took time out to join us for this conversation, I appreciate that. And I appreciate how much time went into this conversation over the past 6 or 7 months. So thank you for that. And I just want to reiterate Sarah and Commissioner Portillo's invitation that if there are any additional comments from any of the work group members, this is a great time for that. So, but I don't have any questions.
I'm just sort of curious. I don't know who to ask this question of, but the issues for further consideration. I'm interested in what discussion happened around those issues, and if there's a way to resolve those, what might be some paths we might do to resolve those issues for further consideration. I don't know who would answer that.
This is Commissioner Portillo. I will say that in some of those issues, and some of this was brought up in Chief Judge McCabria's memo that was added to it in discussions of conflict. And I did have a conversation with Melody Brannon, federal public defender, earlier today via email, particularly around the conflicts piece, because what we're discussing here in Douglas County when it comes to indigent defense around misdemeanors looks very similar to what we have at the federal level when it comes to a hybrid system of an institutional defense office and then a panel for conflicts. And from some of the feedback that I received from Ms. Brannon, it was really the argument that we don't need to think about concerns for pushing for a lesser level of defense if we want to make sure that we have an institutional office that has all of the resources that they need to do the job, but that both a public defender's office and panel counsel can have clients who access resources, but making sure that that institutional office provides support in the community for training, information, and can kind of be a hub for making sure that resources are there. But equal access to resources, community resources, that may look different in how the institutional office versus panel attorneys get them, but that individuals who are being served by both panel attorneys and an institutional attorney can still receive the same resources. So it may be a different path to how, but the actual resources are similar. So this is something that we have models for this at the federal level, and we can see how to implement that here in Douglas County.
Commissioner Kelly, I would also add that I had a number of conversations with Heather Cessna related to the integration between felony indigent defense and misdemeanor indigent defense, and what what's possible for bids and maybe what's not. I really just appreciated Heather's openness to those conversations and how that could all be tried to be at least coordinated and work collaboratively together. So while I don't think we have any exact answers, we wanted to elevate the issue, that we understand that there's some complexity in that place, but I feel confident that BIDS is a great partner for us in working to try to make that as smooth as possible.
Just maybe a quick follow-up, maybe for Sarah, maybe for the Chief Judge. Is this something we feel like we can work at? I mean, is this it sort of sounds, listening to Commissioner Portillo, who participated in the work group, and I didn't invite any of the other work group members to comment on. Is this something we feel like these issues can be ironed out through this process? Or is that something we would do in the work agreement? I'm just trying to figure that part out. Or is it just something that as we do this, we'll figure out how to make it better?
Well, I would say in regard to a different state office, a state felony office versus a local misdemeanor office, and then a conversation around juveniles. Certainly, I think for misdemeanors and juveniles, I think it's something we will work through. It is just hasn't been worked through yet. So I think it is possible to talk about how that coordination and how that can be done a little bit more seamlessly. I think conversations about and from what I understand, like, this is done statewide in other offices, that other counties that have a state funded, BIDS funded felony office, and then there are local offices. So it is something that we can definitely work through. But we didn't really the work group wanted to stay at a higher level in terms of those specific integration issues. And really, that was part of the conversation, that at a certain point, this will get down to how the district court wants to administer the program. They have a lot of latitude in terms of how the program is administered. And I think we have an excellent working relationship with our district court bench, and we can work through many of those issues as we move towards implementation.
Thanks.
If we don't have additional questions from commissioners, we will open this to public comment. Do we have any public comment here in the courthouse?
Hi, my name is Paula Martin. What else did you say you needed? My address? 1514 Stratford Road. The zip code there is 66044. I was a district court judge for 25 years. I retired 2 years ago. I'm not here to say that the panel as it has existed is the best. I'm here to say that what we want, or what I think we all want, is the best representation that indigent defendants can receive. And I'm limiting my comments to misdemeanor because that's what's before the commission today. And how that will ultimately work with the felonies is to be seen in the future. But I think the goal needs to be not necessarily the process, because this was a very unusual process for how this got started, that there was never any kind of request for proposals. It just kind of happened, although I know it's been a discussion for a long time. But as far as actually asking for proposals, there wasn't really a procedure in place. So now there are two proposals, and I am on the board, if it's ultimately approved, have agreed to serve on the board of the Douglas County Defense Services. And I have known those 7 attorneys for years. And you have before you 5 of them here tonight who are the best criminal defense attorneys in Douglas County. They have tried countless cases, both misdemeanor and felony. They didn't collect data because that was never requested. And so I don't think you can penalize them for not being able to give you the data that nobody ever asked them for. Nor do I think they can be criticized for not understanding the procedure, because they're lawyers. They know the law, but they don't necessarily know how all of this works as far as getting to the commission. And so what I am here to say is to keep in mind who provides the best criminal defense to indigent defendants. 7 attorneys who have lived in Douglas County for years, who are invested in their community, not only through criminal defense, but through other community activities, who plan to stay here indefinitely and provide legal services indefinitely and have experience that is unsurpassed. And I mean no disservice to the other applicant, but he has had 2 misdemeanor trials in his life. And if you want to say who's going to provide the best defense, it's people with experience, and they will know how to collect the data that you want if you let them know what you want. It's just never been requested or an issue before, because that's not the way our system worked. But they will work with you. They will provide what you want. They will do away with conflicts because there are 7 of them who are independent. 3 people to handle 400 misdemeanor cases a year, I think is more than anybody can ask of any public defender, particularly when there are 6 divisions in Douglas County that hear criminal cases. So you have the 3, and of the 3 attorneys, you don't even know who 2 of them are. You don't know their ties to the community. You don't know their expertise. You don't know their history. And so I just ask you to keep that in mind as you think about the people who care about our community, who are invested in our community and have the experience to provide indigent defense services. And that's what they want to do. That's all they've ever wanted to do. And they're committed to that, both as professionals, not just for money. Obviously, you don't make money doing this, but they know that's a professional obligation, and they have always risen to the occasion. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for your consideration of this important issue.
Thank you. I do just want to make clear that we're taking public comment on the Indigent Defense Work Group report this evening. We will be discussing both of the proposals that we've received when it comes to misdemeanor indigent defense for Douglas County next week. That is on next week's agenda. Today, we are not just discussing misdemeanor indigent defense. We are discussing how we want to go about looking at indigent defense within our community overall. And so we would like to keep public comment to the report, not to either of the proposals that we will be discussing next week. But we do invite you back next week to have the conversation with us then.
I will be here, and really all I meant to say was what's important is good criminal defense and data, and that data can be collected. I know that's been an issue in the report. Thank you.
Do we have any additional public comment in the courthouse?
Yes, my name is Greg Robinson, 3116 Trail Road here in Lawrence. With that caveat to, I guess, to rein it into the report, I would echo the comments that Judge Martin had mentioned as well, because a lot of this is about process. We're already at this report, And I've read in the paper where many of folks have said, oh, it's been transparent. Well, the group that, until Mr. Clark's group put in for this, it was hidden, in my opinion, between community partners. Community partner exemption prohibited or did not require an RFP or an RFQ for request for qualifications. The folks that were being talked to about getting over 450,000 of our taxpayer dollars were not even, and this is a couple months ago, I think I checked, were not even had their approved 501c3 yet. So they're already being told that, hey, we're earmarking this money for you. They don't even have their requirements yet. And they don't have any of their attorneys. You asked today, who are these folks? They don't have anybody. They have 0 people in this holistic defenders, none. Who are they? Can anybody answer that question? What's their qualifications? We don't know, but we're going to go to next week to discuss proposals, right? Is that what we're going to do without any of that information? And this is the biggest boondoggle. I'll get to the report for the taxpayer. Right now, my last check of the records was this is about 350,000 a year, just to round it up, for criminal defense, as it is right now. With this proposal, one of them's 450,000, the other is over $500,000, and that doesn't even include conflicts. So what you guys are asking the taxpayers to do is take something that's been annually about $300,000, $350,000 to upwards of $1 million. For what? Misdemeanors? Are you really? Is that what we're doing? Misdemeanors. And I keep hearing the word equitable thrown out in this stuff. These are misdemeanors. You know, I was on this panel for years, and all the people in Mr. Clark's group, as Judge Martin had mentioned, they are top notch. Will win hands down on any proposal. Because again, I asked the question, who is part of Holistic Defenders? Who? Can anybody right now tell me one attorney that's on that group? Can anybody? I mean, I understand you don't have to respond during public comment, and I expect the silence, but I guarantee you can't answer one question. You can't answer that question. So the other issue is, you know, I read something in the paper about transparency involving this. Well, where's the transparency? Has anybody realized that Cooper Overstreet, who ran on 2 of our commissioners' ticket, is the board of director on the board of directors for Holistic Defenders? Has that been made public? Has that been discussed in this room? Seems like it's more of a, I lost my race, so let me get in here with the people I ran with to see if I can't get something that costs the taxpayers more money, paid for by the taxpayer. You know, this is just a handout to somebody else potentially. And again, I go back to the fact that you cannot even name one attorney on Holistic Defenders, but yeah, we're going to talk about the proposal next week. Anyway, I know the clock is always going to buzz me out, but I'll leave it at that. But I would say if this goes to I would ask it to be tabled and put it on next year's budget. But if this has to go to a vote on qualifications, then the Douglas County Defenders with Mike Clark's proposal absolutely wins hands down. Thank you.
I do think it's important, since we've had discussions around this, when we talk about transparency. Cooper Overstreet did participate in our campaigns. Sam Allison Natali, who is one of the attorneys with the Kansas Holistic Defenders, did volunteer on both my campaign and Commissioner Reed's campaign. I think when we talk about transparency, a big part of this is that we've been having conversations around indigent defense. What we are here to talk about today is indigent defense overall. And when we talk about what is working or isn't working in Douglas County, a big part of the discussions that we've been having in Douglas County is that there have been critiques of our current indigent defense system, both critiques for misdemeanors and for felonies. We had a number of conversations around criminal justice reform in our community throughout 2020. And a big part of this is looking at not just what's happening locally, but what's happening across the state and across the country. And so also in transparency, I serve on Governor Kelly's Commission on Racial Equity and Justice, and we've spent a lot of time talking about indigent defense. And that's why we've also been talking about it locally, because we're looking at ways to improve it from a racial equity standpoint. We know, and a big part of what our report has discussed, is that we don't have enough good data about how our panel system is working. A big part of that is because we haven't asked for those data in the past, but it is putting a big burden on the courts to say we're expecting courts to collect data exclusively for defense attorneys, because then we're asking judges to do more management of defense attorneys than they would possibly do of prosecutors. So we need to look at systems where we can have equitable support for defense and prosecution in our community and good data so we can make data-driven decisions of how we spend our taxpayer dollars and how we see if we truly do have equitable outcomes within our criminal legal system. Do we have any additional public comment here in the courthouse? Do we have any public comment online?
Just a reminder, if anybody wants to make public comment, please raise your hand in Zoom, but we're not seeing any raised hands.
Okay, we do not need a vote on this item. This was just for commissioners' information purposes. And as we discussed, we will be discussing proposals for indigent misdemeanor defense next week. Oh, of course. Go ahead, Commissioner Kelly.
So I just want to, both of our public comments were around the qualifications of the attorneys that will be, that will be providing this. That isn't what the county commission decides, if I'm understanding correctly.
Correct. That is up to the chief judge.
Yeah, that's up to the chief judge. We're just how we pay for it, right? And what service we provide. Okay, thanks.
Judge McCaber, if you'd like to make a comment, please come to the microphone.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly, for the question or comment. Jim McCabe, Chief Judge of the District Court here. It's such a nuanced question, and I like the way our system works. But to be clear, whenever a legislative body offers an option, this is how we are going to fulfill our role, our obligation to fund criminal defense. That's your prerogative. The court will make use of that to the extent that it can. And if you have a bids office or another service provider providing it, they're going to hire the attorneys they want to. We will, in any individual case, make decisions about whether those attorneys are meeting the qualifications. So it's sort of a two-layer aspect. Any private attorney who comes into a case, nobody's going to be assessing them separately from the judge saying, are you meeting the qualifications in this case? So there is a real consequence in making the decision to go from a panel position, which for a long time has left the discretion in the court. Whoever wants to apply, applies. The judges review those resumes and qualifications and put you on the panel or not. And then on that case-by-case basis, we make those decisions. That will continue no matter what system we use. But it's a shift in who that pool of people is depending on how you choose to fulfill that function. And that's the only nuance that I wanted to make to the question that you asked and the answer that Sarah gave. Yes, we will still make the individual qualification decisions, but there's consequences, as you already know, to how you choose to go forward in that aspect of it. So I hope that was a helpful clarification. Okay.
We will move on to item 4.3, business associate and contractor use agreements with Jayhawk Area Agency on Aging. Sarah.
Commissioners, Jill Joliker is going to briefly discuss this item.
Commissioners, this request is just to approve a data use agreement, just as it outlines in the memo with Jayhawk Area Agency on Aging. It's a significant addition to our My Resource Connection care coordination platform so that we can greater reflect the need to coordinate care for our senior population and the folks that the frail, elderly, disabled that Jayhawk is really working hard to coordinate with the health department, Lawrence Douglas County Fire and Medical, to try to do some problem solving and prevention work around through Project Lively. So it's a great evolution of my RC and we're looking forward to moving forward with it.
Do we have any questions from commissioners? Sarah, you look like you want to jump in.
I just had meant to put this on consent, so I'm feeling guilty. So
We're here now, so we will take public
Okay.
comment. It looks like our courtroom has cleared out, so we don't look to have any public comment in the courtroom. Do we have any public comment online?
We do not.
Okay, then we will bring this back. Commissioner Kelly, you look like you are ready.
I recommend we approve the business associate agreement and contractor user agreement with Jayhawk Area Agency on Aging and Johnson County, Kansas.
Second.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That concludes our regular agenda. Do we have any appointments to consider this evening? Okay,
So-
we will move on to miscellaneous. Sarah, what do you have for us?
Thanks, Commissioners. My weekly memo is attached and it's chock full of a lot of upcoming dates for different events. Just want to remind the commission and the public that the county offices are closed tomorrow in honor of Veterans Day, but we'll be back open on Friday. In addition to that, next week, we do not have a work session next week, just a regular business meeting, and then we will be off the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, on 11/24, we will not have any, a meeting that week at all. And then just as we are getting close to the end of the year, we'll be back, and my intent is that our last meeting of the year will be the 15th. And that's what staff is planning towards that. And then we would take a 2-week break and then be back in January in the new year. So just answer any questions the commissioners might have.
This is Commissioner Portillo. Thank you, Sarah. I don't have any questions. I do just want to say a big thank you to Sarah for chairing our CJCC meeting this week. I think we had a great conversation and really appreciated the additional data from our friends at Northeastern University, and it sparked a really wonderful conversation from the CJCC. Do we have other miscellaneous items?
This is Commissioner Reed. I just want to publicly thank all the staff that made it possible for me to go into the clock tower this Monday, and that is one of the most exciting things I've done in a long time. So upon learning that there was a manual process required for changing the clock, is the original clock from 1905. I asked Sarah if I might be able to get a front row seat to that process because I'm a nerd about history and I'm a townie. And so now I feel like I have incredibly awesome bragging rights for having gone up into our tower. So thank you, Sarah, for making that happen, and Carrie and Jimmy and Glenn for maintenance. So it was really fun for me, and lots of people in the community have enjoyed the pictures and videos. So it's a fun piece of county history to share.
Commissioner Kelly, I'll just share that we had our quarterly KU Innovation Park meeting today. Sarah and I both were in attendance. We continue to ask for more data from our partners. They presented their 2022 budget, which has a cut of $50,000 from the county in it. And we talked about what services they're not going to be able to provide due to those fundings being cut. They did get some more federal dollars that they're excited about, and it's really around business services that for incoming business. So as our representative on there, I thought it was important to let the other commissioners know what the discussion was about. We did approve the budget today, and just heard more about what their intentions are going forward.
If we have nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you.